I have an ideas list, and on that ideas list is about 100 concepts of films that I want to make about scuba diving. This is not one of those films. If I'm honest, I don't want to make this film at all. One of the ideas on my pre-production list is described in 3 words. It just says, honor thy mentor. So I guess that's the closest concept to what this film is about. This film is for Andy. As it was reported in Ottawa local news and felt as an earthquake across social media, my mentor, my first instructor trainer, my friend and your friend, and mentor to so many people around the world, a Goliath of the scuba diving industry, Mr. Thomas Andrew Phillips, passed away last month from a scuba diving accident. If you've watched my last few Mouthpiece Mondays, you probably have seen the Easter egg desktop pictures I've been putting up there with Andy's personal motto and some of my favorite shots of the man. And my initial reaction was to make this video sooner, but I wanted to let time pass a little bit and have time to reflect on my own feelings and thoughts about what had happened. And I think I'm about there now. And please don't get me wrong, this is not going to be an obituary of the guy. I'm not going to attempt any kind of armchair accident analysis. I think that's futile and stupid. And there's enough of those articles already out there. I mean, the internet's been flooded since Andy's passing. All I want this to be is a humorous collection of anecdotes and stories about the guy that I knew who introduced me to this amazing career and supported me throughout my instructor development. When the news broke, I was in Grand Cayman filming a series for this channel, and luckily, thankfully, I was with a good friend of mine who also knew Andy, so we were able to have a couple of drinks and reminisce. And I mentioned that I wanted to do this video, and he was smart and he said, like, you know, just wait a little while. But I do want to say, and I do want to put on record what Andy's friendship and what his mentorship meant to me. My first impression of Andy was electronic. I was working on a ship in Japan, 15 hours ahead of Honduras, time-wise, and I had a break in the middle of the afternoon to run ashore and run off a whole load of online errands that I had to do. One of which was reaching out to dive centers around the world that I'd researched and refined to find a place to do my instructor development course. So I wrote out a very generic, "Dear Sir, Madam, please tell me more about your IDC program" email, planning to copy paste it to these 5, I think it was 5 or 6 IDC centers that I'd handpicked. I remember UDC was my first choice, so I rattled off the email, clicked send, and heard the swoosh sound effect of the email on its way. And then I opened up a new email and found the address for the second dive center I was looking at and was ready to copy paste. And the bell chimed for a new mail arrival. And it was, of course, Andy. He was awake and emailing at what would have been midnight or just gone in Honduras time. And this will surprise nobody who knew him. Sure, to know Andy was to dive with him, but also to know Andy was to watch him work at his computer. We had an hour before boarding a liverboard in Palau, and it was a small group of us that Andy had put together, 7 or 8 divers. And with that hour, everyone went off to buy souvenirs or get a cup of coffee or stock up on booze for the liverboard trip. Andy emailed. He found Wi-Fi, he was sitting at a picnic table, and he was just blowing through emails. And when we got back to the dock, his keyboard was practically smoking. I mean, I said, "Andy, how many emails did you get through? It's been an hour." He said 75. and he gave that big Andy smile. So more than one a minute. You can get pills for that these days. So just last week I went back through my email and I filtered by Andy Phillips and his various contact aliases. 683. We exchanged 683 emails. That doesn't include the countless Facebook messages. Each one of them ended with his signature sign off. In the meantime, if there's anything else I can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask. I honestly believe that he meant it every single time. One of Andy's favorite quotes, taken of course from the movie Glengarry Glen Ross. When I use it now, whenever we close a piece of business or I get a new student sign up, my wife kind of scowls at me because she's in sales and it's really cliche and hates that quote. But I always chuckle and I always think of Andy. After I finished my instructor course at UDC, which I still look back on fondly as one of the most invigorating educational experiences of my life, Andy came to each classmate individually, shook their hand, bought them a drink, said thank you, spent time to ask what they were going to go on to do, what their plans were, offer his, personal assistance if there's anything I can do for you. Our business was concluded. We'd paid him money, he taught us our instructor development course. But he made sure that he went around and spent time with each individual and made them feel special and made our IDC group feel special, like we were his only students, like we were his only IDC group, not that he did this month in, month out for 20 years. And I'm pretty sure, speaking to people who did other IDCs with Andy, that he made everyone feel that way. And I remember thinking, geez, what a humble guy, what a great guy. And I also made a mental note to take him up on that offer, to stay in touch, to make sure I reached out whenever I could. And I just remember thinking, we should be thanking you. We should be buying you drinks. And trust me, we did, obviously. But it was one of his superpowers to make you feel like the most important student, even if you're in a class of 15 or 20 people. And that's something that I've taken from him and try to apply to my own teaching, and I'll always be thankful for. And of course, after the IDC, you go to the IE party, and all hell breaks loose, especially on a hedonistic island like Utila. And of course, Andy was the life of the party and showed us what the dive instructor life was really all about. Drinking. I'm kidding. Or am I? And then I went on to work as a dive operations manager for a dive center in the Caribbean. And I did stay in touch with Andy, and we emailed often, and that connection that we made turned into a good friendship. And actually kind of a symbiotic relationship, because I started to hire his recruits fresh out of the IDC. So Andy got a placement option where people could come and work for somebody that he'd trained, that he knew. And I got instructors that were fresh, no bad habits, and trained by the very best. Andy's approach taught me the importance of a skill that has nothing to do with diving, nothing that I paid him for in the IDC, but that has carried me through to where I am today, and that's networking. Nobody I know, inside or outside of the diving industry, exemplified the words ambassador and role model in quite the way that Andy Phillips did. More than just a personal motto, Andy Phillips lived and breathed the sport and the lifestyle that he was an advocate for. He was amazingly knowledgeable, but never boastful. He was Utila's most powerful eco-warrior. I'll go out on a limb here and say that no one in the history of the sport has had more influence on dive educators than Andy Phillips. There are instructors, sure, that have worked as an instructor longer than Andy had, and there are probably instructors out there who had certified more people than Andy did. But if you consider his influence of training instructors who then go on and train other people who eventually become instructors and so on. I had a dive master trainee reach out to me long after he'd finished his DM course to ask for the name of the guy that I did my IDC with, and I said it was Andy at UDC. And he went on and did his instructor course, and then he went to work in the Middle East somewhere, I think it was Oman, and trained a dive master who also went to Utila to do his instructor course. So there's 3 generations right there of instructors that were trained by Andy, who were trained by somebody who was trained by Andy, who was trained by somebody who was trained by Andy. That's not easy to say. In fact, I'd make a bet that, like the famous Kevin Bacon movie Connection game, you could do a 6 degrees of divers from Andy Phillips. Take any diver on the planet and find somebody who was trained by somebody who knew somebody who was trained by Andy Phillips. He was just so utterly genuine. I remember I'd been saving up on a dive instructor's wages to make the pilgrimage to Truk Lagoon. I didn't have much of a pot down when Andy reached out to me and said, "Hey, I heard you're interested in going to Truk. Just letting you know, we've got spots available on a trip that I'm running." I didn't have much of a pot down when Andy announced that he was going to run a recreational and technical trip to Truk Lagoon. So I asked Andy, "Hey, look, save me a spot on the boat," and I switched to eating noodles for a year to be able to afford it, because I didn't want to miss the opportunity of going to Truk with Andy. That made the trip. A few days before I was due to head out, I had all of my technical diving regulators stolen from me. I was in a panic. I mean, I was in a flat spin. This was the trip of a lifestyle. I couldn't afford to buy new regs. I'm a dirt poor beach bum dive instructor. So stressed out, I reached out to Andy and I told him what had happened, and Andy just kicked it into high gear. Immediately leapt into action. Phone calls, emails out to Truk, out to different operators in Truk, even ones we weren't going with, and begged, borrowed, I don't think he stole, but he definitely begged, borrowed, and scraped together regulators I needed and made the Truk trip happen for me. From a technical point of view, I still have my yoke regulator. I could have done the whole trip recreationally, but I think Andy knew the importance of wanting to put me into the technical group, and it was just phenomenal what he did. I mean, he didn't have to do that. He could have just been like, "All right, no worries, we'll put you on the recreational boat." And I don't know what else I can say about the guy. And the man knew how to have fun. I have so many fun memories of Andy that when I think back at him, it's not always the diving memories that come first. I can give you many examples. Getting into an argument with him over what constitutes good scotch on my birthday one year. I remember kidnapping him at the Dema show when he tried to do an Irish goodbye, or in his case a Scottish goodbye, leave without saying anything and go to bed way before his bedtime. We caught up with him at the elevator and dragged him through the streets of Orlando. I remember getting proper lost with him on a night out in Las Vegas, also at a Dema show, and Andy walking up to a lady of the street and asking for directions. I remember, oh God, I wish I didn't, but I remember listening to Andy absolutely murder Wonderwall on the Fish and Fins liverboard karaoke machine. It was one of the most painful things I've ever heard, and yet I would do anything to be able to hear that again. I guess what I'm most sad about overall is that I never got to say thank you to him enough for everything that he did for me, for everything that he's done for dive instructors around the world. I described him as the best diver I knew, and I didn't mean that in any kind of a comparative way or he's better than any other diver. He was the best person I knew who also happened to scuba dive. So of course this video is now for everyone that knew Andy, for everyone that was lucky enough to be trained by Andy, and will serve as a gentle reminder to myself every time I see it on my channel to be the difference and to carry on the legacy of the man's work, to put your heart and soul into everything you do, diving or otherwise. Of course I'm not going to monetize this video in any way, that would be completely wrong, but I did want to put this on the public record as a testament to my mentor. If you feel like commenting it down below, if you knew Andy and you got a funny story to share about him, I think we all do, please feel free to drop that in the comment below, because that would mean the world to me. I'll see you guys next week with a cheerier video. Dive safe, dive often, and be the difference.